Good morning, dear friends, colleagues, and participants. I would like to extend my gratitude to the organizers of this event, the Asfari Foundation and the Arab Studies Institute, for the chance to speak today. It's perhaps one of my greatest pleasures to be talking about two subjects which has branded my personal as well as my academic career, AUB and activism. 150 years have passed since the founding fathers of AUB decided to buy land in a fairly deserted part of Beirut, which back then was outside the walled city of Beirut, or what now is commonly referred to as downtown Beirut. When the Syrian Protestant College opened its doors in 1866, many regarded these Protestant missionaries as insane for venturing to set up a school, and I quote, in the middle of cactus groves and wild beasts. And because technically they were not allowed under Ottoman law to convert any of the Muslim population of the empire into Protestantism. Slowly but surely, this small Protestant missionary project went beyond this framework to become one of the leading educational institutions in the East, and categorically beyond. Many people would view such a statement as bold and perhaps vain, accusing fans of AUB of being too Ras Beirut-centric, and this small university does not truly compete with the leading Western institutions, nor has influenced history, as some might claim. However, as my presentation will try to show, that AUB's contribution went merely beyond its exceptional liberal arts education, or making the man of the future, as Daniel Bliss put it, but to its ability to interact and to shape and to be shaped by the events beyond its gilded walls, and to act as a vanguard for civic engagement both locally and regionally. One of the first challenges of the Syrian Protestant College had to face was the famine of 1914, which was brought about by the naval siege the Allied forces had set up against the Ottoman Syrian coast. The relief work that Howard Bliss headed with other members of the Syrian Protestant College was the first to respond to the shortage in food and supplies. However, the real influence of the SPC and AUB, as it became known after 1919, coincidentally the date of the Versailles Treaty, was to act as an incubator for many of the cultural, civic, and political movements of the region. This was evident in many of the entities that spread in and around campus, with the blessing and perhaps initiative of the administration. The first of these groups was the famous literary club. Okay, fine. The first of these groups was the famous literary club, Al-Urwa Al-Wusqa, founded in 1918 to promote Arabic literature and rhetoric. With the rise of the anti-colonial rhetoric and the advent of the Arab national movements in the region, this bardic forum transformed into a platform for political activism against colonialist Western hegemony over the Arab world. I wouldn't be surprised if we cross-reference the 20-plus founding members of the United Nations present in the San Francisco Conference to the records of Al-Urwa to find that many or all of them were active or perhaps leading members of it. With time, and with the help of key faculty members, such as Constantine Zre and Nabih Amin Faris, acting as mentors to these young men and women, Al-Urwa became the hub for political activism on and off campus, and paved the way for the emergence of Harakat al-Qawmiyin al-Arab, as well as other sister organizations. This movement, that included the names of George Habash, Wadi Haddad, Hani al-Hindi, Ahmad al-Khatib, and others, would provide the ideological framework for many of the liberation and constitutional movements around the Arab world. This movement significantly picked up after the emergence of the Arab-Israeli conflict and the founding of the State of Israel in 1948. While many regard this as somewhat a natural outcome of the events at the time, and dismiss any role that AUB had to play in the forming of their character, I mean the activists here, it would be foolish not to say short-sighted to believe that adolescents, such as the people mentioned above, would have been able to acquire their ideological formation, nor gotten this much exposure without the help of AUB and other factors, of course. Regardless, What remains certain is that these activities acted with the intention to improve and develop the world around them, be it in different ways and measures. While some employed violent and bloody tactics, such as guerrilla warfare and hijacking of civilian planes, others sought a more peaceful approach to activism. One of the most elaborate examples of AUB's engagement with the world beyond its walls can be traced to 1924 with the founding of the Civic Welfare League. While at this stage I did not have enough time to validate my claim, but one can safely assume that CWL was one of the first organized projects of civic engagement in the Arab East. Taking a look at one of the early recruiting literature of the CWL, one notices the easy and straightforward approach to activism. Welcoming students to the new academic year, the CWL reminds those contemplating to join its ranks that it is one of the oldest and biggest clubs on campus, and urges them to join the 5 of its standing committees. The first committee, the Workers' Welfare Committee, helps workers at AUB to better their life. It provides them with the night schooling, free medical samples, as well as entertainment on various occasions. The Work Camp Committee organizes several work camps to poor villages. The Publication Committee is interested in cultural activities. Focus, the name of the publication they produce, is the highlight of the committee's productive work. And the Student Aid Funds, which helps needy students. Last but not least, the Community Welfare Committee organizes projects for helping the sick, the poor, and the orphaned. It also organizes activities for the benefit of the CWL members. Upon further inspection of its bylaws and the composition of the cabinet, we also notice additional activities the CWL was engaged in. Within the 7-member cabinet, 2 officers hold the title and duties of the Director of City Welfare Service and the Director of Village Welfare Service, whose tasks, and I quote, are to plan social service projects to be carried out in the city, in the case of the former, or the village in the case of the latter, which shall be approved by the committee. Naturally, the activities of the CWL would be led by student initiative, but this should not lead us to exclude the role of the faculty, the administration, and the community at large, in which one way or another help to carry out the duties set above. Additionally, the mere fact that these activities varied from educational, developmental, health, poverty, and reconstruction made the scope of the work so vast and inviting to all elements on campus. The Archives of Outlook, the AUB student newspaper, regularly reported on these activities, which ranged from fundraising activities for the poor, work camps in underprivileged areas of the country, to visits to the Palestinian refugee camps, to helping villages on the southern border build shelters against the potential Israeli strikes. Naturally, after the 1967 debacle and the rise of the Palestinian revolutionary elements led by Fatah, the CWL, like many other clubs on campus, directed its activism towards serving the ultimate aim of the revolution. This doesn't exclude that there were other elements on campus, such as right-wing student movements, but I'm talking the majority of the people were directed towards the support of the Palestinian revolution. During my student years at AUB, between 1999 and 2004, the CWL was still operational, but with varying degrees of success. I recall that they did try to launch the night school project, but never became a permanent activity as it was intended. At the moment, the CWL has added to its welfare goals the ever-popular secular card, which all groups and parties on campus flaunt, either out of conviction or because of pure electoral necessity. The CWL also tried to modernize its educational tool to include information technology. Reading of the CWL section of the AUB Student Affairs website, one notices in your new platform, CWL aims to eliminate illiteracy on a community level through a long-established night school program that teaches elementary English to the university employees. CWL counts on the support and dedication of student volunteers to achieve this goal. This year, and with your assistance, we are aiming to introduce computer education and elementary math to the program in order to benefit our society. In addition, through certain activities ranging from lectures to fun events, we look forward to promoting our idea of a civil society by endorsing secularist concepts such as civil marriage and non-sectarian interaction within society. Beyond the aforementioned two institutions of activism, one of the main venues for engagement remains student political activism at large and the numerous student clubs and parties on campus. Excluding the times that the AUB administration consciously suspended the activities of the Student Council for disrupting the academic activities of the university, AUB has always maintained a somewhat vibrant democratic electoral process. And the instances where they suspended the council was in 1955. Constantin Zre, acting president at the time, dissolved Al-Urwa Al-Wusqa and the Student Council, or the famous 1971 and 1974 10% tuition strikes, which ended with the expulsion of 103 students from campus. Among them is the Secretary General of ESCWA, Rima Khalaf. It is worth mentioning that in the fall of 2006, right after the end of the July War, when all academic institutions, public and private, had officially cancelled its student elections, AUB was the only entity brave enough to look beyond the usual pretext of political and sectarian tensions and conduct student elections. Just recently, the university has adopted a system of proportional representation, which will further encourage students to partake in elections and also prevent large coalition from stifling the minority vote. Having served 2 terms as vice president of the University Student Faculty Committee, AUB's modern take on Student Council in 2006 and 2005, I have been witness to how over 6,000 students get the chance to cast their vote to whomever they choose, away from the usual forces that plague the electoral process, both in Lebanon and the region. More so, the AUB student body, led by the Student Council, has on more than one occasion responded to the issues around them with remarkable vigor. I will try to recount some of these instances which I have personal recollections or have encountered in my research. However, I am sure that there remains more events and stories which I have missed, so kindly bear with me. The student body has initiated, spearheaded, and participated in a number of support and protest movements. Examples of these, the UN sanctions of Iraq following the first Gulf War, especially in 1988 with what was called Operation Desert Shield, which led to the so-called humanitarian problem in Iraq. Students took part in these demonstrations. Also remarkable, which we tend to forget, the various anti-Syrian activities which the students of the Free Patriotic Movement, the Aoun faction, and the Lebanese forces used to lead, protesting the military and political hegemony of Syrian hegemony over Lebanon. In 2002, after the Israelis laid siege to Palestinian President Yasser Arafat, the AUB student body organized solidarity protests on and off campus demanding the end of the siege. In 2003, AUB students also joined the worldwide protest movement against the invasion of Iraq, known as No to War, No to Dictatorship. In 2005, following the assassination of AUB trustee and former Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri, AUB students joined many of the unprecedented demonstrations demanding the establishment of an international tribunal, which now many of us take for granted. Just recently, in 2015, with the failure of the Lebanese government to conduct its basic duties, including waste management, AUBites joined many factions which made up the protest, and here I mean both students and faculty and the community at large. My presentation today has recounted when and how AUB, both as a university and as a community, has tried to engage the world around it and to attempt at making change for the better. Nevertheless, I would like to also affirm that AUB, like any other organism, has had its ebbs and flaws. And furthermore, not everything that AUB has done over the last decade and a half has been guided by pure altruism. However, to try to brand this university as an ivory tower geared towards training elitists, capitalists, is somewhat of a fallacy. The sheer fact that many of the self-hating AUB graduates that hurl these accusations at AUB have adopted an anti-elitist, anti-Western rhetoric towards their alma mater or any other faction they deem to be part of the imperialist plot might be proof enough that AUB has indeed fulfilled its goals of allowing its students to develop within the liberal arts tradition. Moreover, in practical terms, the efforts of the various university, non-academic institutions discussed above is enough to make an argument that AUB has never let its physical or intellectual walls prevent it from being in touch with the world around it. Thank you very much.